And now for our next news special report.
Tonight, an urgent unfolding of events as the Middle East teeters on the brink of what could morph into World War III. Israel, standing its ground, sends a stark warning towards Iran amidst a powder keg of geopolitical strife. The U.S. and China, two global superpowers, make decisive military maneuvers. American patriots, your attention is crucial as these developments just aren't on distant shores. They ripple directly into the heart of our republic, our values, and our security. What starts in the Middle East won't stay there. So stay with us for this special report and don't miss the final thought. It's something every American needs to hear. In a world growing darker with potential conflict, a spark in the Middle East could set off a conflagration unlike anything we've seen since the world wars of the 20th century. Israel has thrown down the gauntlet, with Economy Minister Nir Barkat issuing a dire warning. Any move by the Iran-backed Hezbollah could see retaliation not just against the proxy forces, but against Iran itself. His words, promising to, quote, wipe the Ayatollahs from the face of the earth, underscore the gravity of a situation ready to explode beyond regional borders. Amidst this high-stakes backdrop, foreign naval forces are positioning themselves strategically in the region. The Chinese have dispatched 6 vessels, marking a significant presence, while the U.S., not to be outdone, has brought in its most advanced carrier. These movements signal a wider international concern over the escalating tensions in the Middle East and the potential ripple effects on global security. Take a look.
During the war between Israel and the Hamas in the Gaza Strip, 6 Chinese naval vessels have been active in the Middle East region. As per an announcement from the Chinese Ministry of Defense, the 44th Naval Escort Task Force has been engaged in routine operations in the area. In the previous week, they additionally carried out a collaborative drill with the Omani Navy while visiting Oman. After the conclusion of its trip to Oman, the Chinese Naval Escort Task Force arrived at Shuwaik Port in Kuwait as planned on the morning of October 18th. The Chinese naval contingent commenced a 5-day diplomatic visit to Kuwait. The Chinese Ministry of Defense said, guided by Kuwaiti naval patrol craft Filaka, warships of the Chinese task force, including ship Zibo, ship Jingzhou, and ship Qiandahu, docked at Shuwaik Port. They were welcomed by more than 200 people, including representatives of the Kuwaiti military, staff of the Chinese embassy in Kuwait, and overseas Chinese. This task force originates from the People's Liberation Army Eastern Division and consists of the Zibo, a Type 052D guided missile destroyer, the frigate Jingzhou, and the integrated supply ship Qiandahu. With tensions escalating in the region, the presence of 6 Chinese vessels in Middle Eastern waters has gained growing significance. The disclosure of Chinese warships in the area coincides with an expansion of the United States' presence in the same region.
The turmoil isn't contained to verbal threats. The Israeli Defense Forces are amassing at the Gaza border, preparing to quell the Hamas threat within its boundaries. This militant group, also with ties to Iran, escalated the crisis with a sudden onslaught on southern Israel, resulting in tragic loss and hostages taken. But the IDF's gaze is fixed northward too, wary of Hezbollah and the potential for a conflict stretching across multiple fronts. And it's not just the Middle East watching with bated breath. The U.S., recognizing the delicate balance of power and the necessity of a steadfast response, has initiated significant military movements. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, following pressing discussions with President Biden, has directed additional defensive measures to fortify the region. The USS Ford carrier strike group, already positioned in the eastern Mediterranean, is now joined by the Dwight D. Eisenhower. The dual carrier presence, a display of naval might, hints at preparedness for a massive air campaign should the needs arise. The USS Ford, a pinnacle of naval technology, boasts increased deck space and sortie rates, factors that, when combined with the USS Eisenhower, represent a formidable interoperative force ready to protect American military power. But there's more than just offensive capability being bolstered. The Pentagon, in a prudent move, has dispatched Patriot missile batteries and Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, or THAAD, systems to the Middle East. Though the exact locations remain undisclosed, their mission is clear: to shield U.S. forces and provide a security umbrella for parts of Israel against the specter of Iranian long-range ballistic missiles. Recent escalations have prompted the Pentagon to amp up its defensive posture in the region. The deployment of not just 1 but 2 aircraft carrier strike groups additional air defense systems and troops being put on heightened alert suggests the U.S. isn't taking any chances. But what's the overarching strategy behind these moves? Are they purely for deterrence, or is there more than meets the eye? For a deeper dive into Washington's decision-making and the potential implications of these deployments, let's take a look at what's happening over on Al Jazeera America and how they're covering this. Watch.
Meanwhile, the Pentagon says it's now deploying additional air defense systems throughout the Middle East in response to recent escalations. Let's speak to Heidi Jo Castro in Washington, D.C. for more on that. Heidi, 2 aircraft carrier strike groups, now this, and I see even more troops are being put on higher alert. Is this deterrence, or does it potentially go further than that?
Nastasia, according to the Defense Secretary's announcement about this new deployment, he says this is about deterrence, about keeping this conflict within Israel and Gaza and not having it spread wider. However, you look at the things that the U.S. is now sending to ground-based missile defense systems. While President Biden has said he will not be putting U.S. troops on the ground in Israel. So it really makes you wonder where these systems would go. Of course, the U.S. does have troops in the region. There's 2,500 in Iraq, another 900 in Syria. And of course, just earlier this week, some of those troops came under attack from drones. So potentially these systems could go there. Of course, just off of the coast of Israel in the Mediterranean, we have those 2 aircraft carriers, as you said, with some thousands of personnel aboard. But certainly sending these ground-based missile defense systems may show further escalation of this, even though the U.S. still is framing it as deterrence.
These deployments aren't static either. Austin has emphasized the readiness to mobilize additional forces should the situation deteriorate further. The message is unambiguous. The U.S. stands ready to defend its interests and allies in the region against Iranian provocations or any escalations in this theater of tension. Yet the waters grow murkier with China's entrance. The People's Liberation Army has dispatched its 44th Naval Escort Task Force to the Middle East. This group, having recently conducted operations in Oman, comprises advanced military vessels, including the guided missile destroyer Zibo and the frigate Jinju, along with the supply ship Guangdao. Their destination is undisclosed, but their presence speaks volumes. As Israel gears up for a potential ground incursion into Gaza, the PLA's proximity could complicate an already intricate geopolitical dance. This isn't merely about regional conflict anymore. This is a global stage with superpowers circling, each with their stakes in the outcome. The concern in Washington is palpable. What if the current crisis isn't just another chapter in the long-standing Middle East conflict? What if this time the fuse lit leads to a much larger explosion? But let's pause for a moment. Just as global leaders are showcasing their strength in the Middle East, you have the power to amplify your business. This is a call to all patriot entrepreneurs. Your products, your services deserve worldwide recognition. And what better way to achieve this than by partnering with the Next News Network? Together, we can form a beacon of truth, fortifying our republic against all threats, foreign and domestic. Visit sponsorapatriot.com right now and make your mark on a global scale. Now, the situation in Gaza remains dire. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's stern vow signals a protracted conflict ahead. Hamas militants, whom Netanyahu unequivocally labels as new Nazis, face a determined IDF ready to defend its nation at all costs. The human toll is climbing, with thousands of casualties marking a tragic chapter in the region's history. The stakes have never been higher as tensions and rhetoric escalate on all fronts. The battle is described by Israeli leadership as a fight for survival, with the goal of a definitive victory against Hamas. But will Hezbollah, backed by Iran, enter the fray? If they do, the consequences could be devastating, not just for Israel, but for the entire Middle East. Now dive into this raw and riveting statement from Israeli leadership on their perspective and strategy. Watch.
We're in a battle for our lives, a battle for our home. This is not an exaggeration. This is the war. It's do or die. They need to die. And we are now in a double battle. One battle is a battle to hold action here, and on the other side to win there, an absolute victory that will erase Hamas. I can't tell you now if Hezbollah will decide to fully enter the war. If Hezbollah decides to enter the war, it will long for the second Lebanon war. They will be making the biggest mistake of their lives, and we will hit them with an unimaginable force. It will mean devastation for them and the state of Lebanon.
Amidst the airstrikes, rocket attacks, and a burgeoning humanitarian crisis, the world holds its breath. Iran's influence through Hezbollah and Hamas pose a multi-front challenge for Israel. Any miscalculation or drastic action could pull neighboring countries into the fray. And with the global powers like the U.S. and China directly involved, the potential for this regional conflict to erupt into a broader war is an ever-present danger. Admiral Lord West's warning rings loud and clear. The crisis could spiral into a global conflict in just 6 harrowing steps. The UK and US could find themselves with boots on the ground, and countries like Lebanon, Syria, Iran, and Russia might be propelled into the chaos. The stakes are monumental. Every skirmish, every diplomatic decision, every show of force could tip the balance towards peace or plunge the world into conflict. It's a cauldron of volatility, with revenge, military alliances, and civilian peril blending into a potential recipe for disaster. As Lord West notes, it's a dangerous, heady mix that could ignite at the slightest provocation. In these grave times, it's not just the fate of the Middle East hanging in the balance, but the security and stability of our great American republic. What we're witnessing could very well be the preamble to a conflict engulfing nations, a potential World War III scenario. We as patriots must stand vigilant, understanding that the ripples of these distant events touch our shores, influence our policies, and shape our global standing. Now is the time for unity, strength, and resolve, ensuring that America remains the beacon of freedom and democracy in a world teetering on the edge. Our values, our way of life are non-negotiable, and we must stand ready to defend them against any threat, be it from the deserts of the Middle East or in the corridors of power in nations far from our borders. Patriots, stay strong, stay informed, and most importantly, stay united. Congratulations, you made it to the end of the video. Now keep up your quest for truth with this next news report. And if you found our channel enlightening, join the millions who agree with you. Tap subscribe. Thank you for watching the Next News Network.